Okay, folks, I'm joined today by Stuart Leathem, who has recently produced his latest work, Experiments in Energy. And basically, Stuart, what I want you to do is talk about the album, the inspirations, the work involved, and the floor is yours. You tell me what you want to tell me about the album. I know the bits that I like. I know the bits that I find challenging.
Okay.
Maybe I'll kick it off by saying there's very little of it. There's none of it really would slot into what we were talking earlier about 50s and 60s songs like the Beatles and so forth. None of it is two verse, chorus, verse, 2 minutes 30 seconds, 3 minutes long, packaged. It's just not that simple. It's complex, so that's not to say it's not easy to. I find it easy to listen to. Incidentally, although you haven't had a chance to get a word in edgeways yet, perhaps you know this already, but when you plug the CD into your computer to load it up onto iTunes, it instantly generates the genre as pop. It's embedded there somehow by someone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have called it that.
No, not me.
No, progressive. You can put a title on it, but all for the benefit of the listener, I'll just say that I had a kind invitation to the Black Box a Sunday evening ago or so to listen to the launch really of the CD, and on a very fine sound system that thankfully worked finally when the time came, and it was wonderful experience, and I really enjoyed it. But I'm going to have to let me hand over to you now, Stuart. You tell me about Experiments in Energy, where it kicked off, what you're trying to say, if anything, and give me the bones of it.
Well, it's the first thing I've put out in 4 years, nearly 5 years, and my last release prior to that was a single featuring none other than the late, great Freddie Mercury, singing a duet with the girl who co-stars on this album with me, Esther Trousdale, who's a local artist from Bangor. She and I were thrown together some years ago now. I was asked to write a song for her cousin's wedding, clearly by someone who'd never heard my music before. It could have been a very interesting ceremony.
How did the divorce go in that one night?
Hey, it was annulled.
Did they ask you for the music for the separation ceremony?
Didn't even get that far.
All right, okay.
It was just an annulment. So the precondition on writing that song was that the cousin of the bride, who was one Esther Trousdale, had to be the singer. And luckily for me, she had this. It was very clear. She was only 16 then, but it was very clear then that she was classically trained and had a very versatile voice. And the song went down a storm at the wedding. And she came to me afterwards and said, if you want me to sing on any of your other work, and of course I had a whole pile of experimental stuff up my sleeve. We put an album out in 2015. We rushed out an album really called Cafe for Lost Souls, which has some good stuff on it, but it's also quite disjointed, and I think it feels like it was produced in a rush. After that came out, I had been working with unreleased Freddie Mercury vocals. There were 4 tracks actually I had done featuring Freddie. I'd had a friendship with Queen's producer, ex-producer, now sadly passed away, Dave Richards, and he had kind of pointed me in the direction of these unused Freddie vocal takes. I wasn't really getting anywhere with them. I'd started creating this kind of Indian type tabla-based piece, because that's where he went to boarding school. It morphed into a duet between these vocal takes and Esther.
Freddie Mercury went to boarding school in
India.
India.
Yes, he was packed off at 8 years old. Hence the Indian instrumentation in that piece. Plus, if you synthesize Indian instruments, they don't sound quite so fake. So it was quite a good trick as well. Long story short, Queen Productions really liked it, and it was released, and it was a huge success.
Can I stop you? Can you just, for the benefit of the listener, there's been Queen, Freddie Mercury. Go back to where did this relationship start with Queen? I mean, they didn't ring you up one day and said, we would love you to. So there was a meeting somewhere, and
yes, it really goes back to me going out to the Montreux Jazz Festival about 6 years in a row.
Yeah, on your own bat. I mean, this is nothing
Totally.
to do with...
No, yeah, totally. Queen's producer, Dave Richards, who incidentally was married to a woman from Newton Ards, Colette. After Queen ceased making music in the wake of Freddie's death, he continued working in their studio, which is in the famous Montreux Casino, which burnt down and gave us Smoke on the Water, by Deep Purple, which is the image that inspired that song. I knew that the studio was still active, and I blagged my way into meeting him in 2003, I think, because I let on that I was a composer who was quite successful, which I wasn't, and who was keen to use the studio, which I could never have afforded. And he met me, and we had a drink together and a pancake, and he was lovely, and he had connections to this very small part of Northern Ireland, and we got on like a house on fire. And funny enough, the only really comprehensive interview with Dave was done by me. I did it in a studio just like this one, down the road in downtown, and he did
Not
it.
so luxurious, surely.
No, absolutely not. No,
Bit more basic.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
We didn't have the handmaids
And the
and
cocktail
the butler.
cabinet and the soft lights and stuff.
we didn't have a butler polishing the candlesticks
That's it.
as we chat. But he did a very emotional interview, which kind of got a bit of cult status. When Dave passed away, this interview with him became a bit of a treasured relic, because
So how long is he dead?
he died in 2013.
Right,
So
okay.
what's that? 7 years now.
7 years. Oh, quite a while.
So Brian May tweeted the link to the interview and checked in with me to make sure that it was okay to do so. So that gave me contact.
Oh, right. Okay,
with
so it's really
Brian.
a strange string of...
It was an odd sequence.
an odd sequence of meeting, and
Yes.
still, that's the way it works sometimes.
Yeah. So whenever, so I sort of had very infrequent contact with Brian about my own work. You don't want to bombard someone like that, even though you've got his personal email and whatever. But when I finished this track with Freddie's voice on it and Esther's voice on it, about 2:00 in the morning, I finished the rough mix. I knew that he would be up looking through his little telescope.
Right, but Freddie Mercury by this stage had long gone.
Long gone.
I mean,
Long gone.
he was a sacrifice, shall we say, on the altar of AIDS during the 80s. Yes,
very
am I
much.
right?
91 he died.
91 was
of
it?
But yes,
Right,
but yeah, he
okay.
would have had it through the
Okay.
80s. And Brian instantly really liked what I'd done with Freddie's voice. He liked the fact that it was a rare outtake, so it sounded new, essentially. And he recommended I contact Jim Beach, who's Queen's manager, but more importantly, the manager of Freddie's legacy and estate.
Right.
And he got back to me, really liked it, and we eventually agreed that if the song raised funds for the Mercury Phoenix Trust, which is the AIDS charity that Queen set up in the wake of his death, then there was a possibility to get it out there. So we got it out there, and it's been it's hugely successful. I mean, it's essentially it's gone platinum. It's had 2.4 million
Downloads or streaming?
streams.
Right. That's quite something.
Which is quite something. And I think a lot of people happen upon it by accident because they listen to Queen on Spotify and then they get bounced to me.
Yeah, the name of the track,
Little Freddie Goes to
Little
School.
Freddie Goes to School. Yes, I have that as well.
Yes.
Now, is this again for both the benefit of the listener, me? Is this sampling his voice, or is this an actual vocal track that you were able to?
It was an actual vocal track that I recut to make it sound like he's singing a bit more than he is,
Right.
if that makes
Okay.
sense.
All right.
It's like,
Yep.
it's,
Yep.
But then I did take little sound clips of him from different outtakes to make it sound like he's in the room. So there's little speaky bits and shouty bits, as you do. So that kind of, all of a sudden people were listening to my compositions, so it sort of catapulted us overnight. But Esther Trousdale was great with child.
Yes.
Life happened.
Yes.
And we didn't work together for 2 years because
Right.
she became a mother and had a beautiful little girl. And I went off and did film soundtrack work for Northern Ireland Screen. But I was already starting to put together the bones of an album that would hopefully make my music more accessible and a bit less soundscapey.
Right.
And the best way to do that is to, write songs, essentially. And that's what Experiments in Energy eventually came to be. It's an album of songs that showcase Esther Trousdale's incredible voice. Hopefully,
and her voice is incredible.
It is.
I have to say that it's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, very. It's powerful and controlled at the same time. I don't know what the expression for that would be, but when I say it's in your face, I don't mean it. I mean that in a positive sense. It's just sitting there.
And she can do so much with that voice. We'll sit down whenever we're recording a track. The two of us will sit down and listen to a bare sort of bones of it. I'll have the lyrics scribbled in a book. We have this song book that will fetch $1 million, I'm sure, on eBay someday. And she'll say, well, how do you want me to do this? And I'll say, well, in this song, I don't want any vibrato. You need to sound like a primary school teacher talking to a bunch of 4-year-olds, but you're telling them about the nuclear apocalypse. It's got to be, dark and simplistic at the same time. And she'll do it. Right. She'll understand. And the chemistry we have in the studio to create this stuff, it's quite incredible. And socially, we never see each other. It's a strange relationship, but we can bang out these tracks. She's getting married on Saturday, incidentally, and I'll be there for that. But we barely see each other. Are you
writing songs or music for that at all?
No.
So the marriage has a reasonable chance of success then, is what we're saying.
I think it might.
It'll get off to a good start.
She might see it through.
Yeah, good.
So Experiments in Energy is really, in simplistic terms, it's an attempt to make my compositions accessible and put them in a format where people can hang their hat on lyrics, be wooed by her incredible voice, and hopefully just go along on the ride with us. So it's a song-based version of my work. There are one or two bigger pieces hidden in there, but really it's that's the basis of it.
I said that you know that to categorize it is always a little bit tricky. As far as iTunes are concerned, it's pop. It certainly is not, whatever it is, it's not pop. Do you want to try and put a label or two on it for the benefit? Do you know what I mean? When I you've discovered somebody's music and you think it's great, and you're saying to your friends, have you ever heard of this guy called Stuart Leathem? Have you ever heard of any of his stuff? No. What's it like? And then you're going, well, it's how do I? Well, I can tell you what it's not.
Yeah, and that in a way,
and it could be Stuart Leathem, or it could be Dylan's latest effort, or a folk band you've just heard. So if you were to try and say, well, it's a bit like this, what would you call it?
In a way, that counts
progressive.
Against, I think that counts against us in many ways, because people can't categorize what we do or what I do, and I think in a way it's a strength in many ways because it doesn't sound like anything else. SoundCloud, which is this website that it puts its own genre track by track on the album.
All right.
And so
what have they tried to call it then?
They've called it indie, progressive, electronic, French pop for some reason. I think that's maybe because of the French band Air, who are very soundtracky in their work.
I have to tell you, I heard that. I heard not so much French, but Jacques Brel.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of dark. There's melody there, okay, but it's not sing along with Max Bygrave's melody. There's melody, but it's a bit dark, and it's like the cafe late at night, very late at night, when there's this guy with a guitar and the smoke all around him, all the usual sort of atmospheric stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, I heard that French.
Yeah, absolutely. We have
nightclub kind of stuff.
Musique concrète. Actually, a lot of people think that there's something wrong with their sound system when they play the first track, because there are a lot of strange glitched sounds. That was me sitting with a tape recorder in the Royal Hotel bar just before it closed, because I knew that it was going to be closed. So those initial sounds you hear when you press play, that's the Royal Hotel bar, full of life before
right from Grand Cafe. I'm looking at the
Cafe. Yeah. So
that's going back a bit. I mean, that place has been shut a long time.
It has.
Surely.
Yeah. So
how long is all this in the making?
Well, some of these tracks were written for the Café for Lost Souls album, and we didn't get them finished in time. So The Dame, which is track 3, which is like a show tune, really. It's been around for a long time. Grand Cafe. I mean, the original idea for that track, that was based on a trip to a place in Dublin called Café en Seine. I don't know if you've ever been there.
No.
A very, just a very opulent place to go for a drink. The bones of that track were maybe written 20 years ago.
Goodness.
but weren't realised until maybe a year or so ago. The sessions for this album started in late 2017 and they finished in the summer of 2019.
Right. Okay.
But a lot of the ideas were spinning around.
Or
way before.
they've been around for a long time.
Yeah, so it's an electro
But
acoustic.
it took the best part of 2 years to pull it all together and
Yeah,
into
absolutely.
the finished product.
Well, she's so hard to get hold of.
Yeah, well, she has a habit of running off and, having children and stuff, which is
I know.
a bit thoughtless, frankly.
Completely unacceptable for a composer.
Totally. I mean, I would say you need to look around for somebody a bit more reliable here.
I couldn't work with anybody else, though. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
Oh, well, and they with you, perhaps?
No, well, that's true as well. I did scare other singers off before her.
Yeah, what do you want me to sound like?
Something.
Like the girl who did Pink Floyd. We are digressing. Pink Floyd, and there's little bits of, you could say, Pink Floyd-y-ish stuff in there.
I love Pink Floyd.
The girl that sang on the great, the Great Gig in the Sky.
Yeah.
Just forget her name offhand. But at the time, she got her standard musicians union rate, and it really was like £30 or £40 or something.
For that vocal.
And the vocal
Sheesh.
made the thing. The vocal was the piece.
Oh, it is.
And eventually she went to court, as I'm sure you know the story, and ended up with an undisclosed sum, but I'm sure it must be well into the hundreds of thousands.
Well, I would hope so.
Gotta be.
She deserves it.
Yeah,
for that.
because the sales of that album, but we digress. Where was it? Superstars, that's the second track.
Yes.
I've heard that before. Is that not on a previous...
I put that out. No,
no, maybe you sent that to me as a link or something.
I did. I actually put that out anonymously about a year or so ago. I always felt that Superstars was maybe the most commercial track, and funny enough, the album's been out just over a week now, and it's got more plays than any other track.
Yeah, I can see
streams.
why. It is the most sort of immediately accessible.
It's got ASMR at the start as well, all that sort of goosebumpy whispering stuff at the beginning.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's got a good bass line. Actually, initially that track was back to front. It has an acoustic part at the end of it. That used to be how it began,
right.
And then it went into kind of that more funky feel. But we ended up switching it back and finishing with the acoustic part of the song. So
we'll play some later. I mean, it would be lovely to play, and it may be possible the entire album, but certainly we will slot in a few tracks. What was the one I liked? Under That Bridge. It's Under That Bridge, and then sort of segging into Within the Haze.
Yes,
that appealed a lot to me.
Thank you.
But it is back to trying to describe it, and it's a bit tricky.
Under That Bridge is really a piece of modern classical music with the sound of Ballyholme Bay in it, actually. I remember being out for a walk along Ballyholme Bay, and a very strange phenomenon where the tide was going out, but it was every time the waves went out, they were raking over a pile of stones. There was this lovely clicking effect.
Yeah.
So I got the phone out and recorded
The
that.
undertow.
Under That Bridge was inspired. I was in Lyon, the beautiful French city of Lyon, and I was out for a run early one morning along the banks of the river, and there was a young man with a huge pile of rubble, and he had just struck a match and lit this fire, and it was under a beautiful pedestrian footbridge, a really beautiful construction, and I remember thinking, what an odd place. It was a hot sunny day. What an odd place to do that. But then, of course, people who don't know that story think, what is the metaphorical bridge? Where is it leading? Who's on the bridge? Who's the man? Are we the man? So I thought there was some value there in the different layers of what the bridge could be. People do tend to like that one. And then Within the Haze is maybe the closest thing to just a melodic song on the album.
Yeah, if we talk about accessibility in terms of that you could sit down and easily, without making too much of an intellectual strain or challenge. Within the Haze is lovely. It's
thank you.
So Superstars I'd heard, and that those two are first off are my favourites. So we'll probably play at least those later on. But there are you see, you would be of the 80s, so to speak. Those were the formative teenage 20s years, and I think that's when the biggest absorption of other people's work as well comes into it, and things that you listen to and think, oh, I like that, I wish I could do that. So, I mean, not that was there anything in your mind or any band that you thought, well, they could, this is definitely, that's a bit of Pink Floyd. I mean, I have to own up and say that's pure Pink Floyd, or that's pure, or is it all
there are,
as it came to you? It's very difficult to avoid.
You definitely
What did Paul McCartney say? Something about copying songs or copying song lyrics. It was more or less the idiot will copy, but the genius will borrow. So
I'm not sure where this is on the idiocy or genius scale, but definitely you do write what you've been listening to, and often what you're listening to at the time will inadvertently come out. There was a side project that I'm a big fan of Air, the French band Air, the two guys who do all that synthy stuff. There was a side project that sprung out of Air, a very little known album that's had less plays than this new one of mine, called Tomorrow's World, and it was a beautiful fusion. It was a female vocalist, not as good as Esther Trousdale, but some of the instrumentation techniques in that I really liked. So there's probably some of that in there. This whole album, the subplot to this album of mine is reverb, making her voice reverberate for very, very long periods of time, and then finding harmony within that. And I think Tomorrow's World did that quite well. I think we do it better. The stacked up harmonies, there's probably shades of ABBA in there, actually. Whenever this beautiful female voice is, 3 and 4 part harmonies, there are definitely shades of ABBA pop in there.
And is this is all done? Studios nowadays can be an awful lot smaller than they used to be.
Yeah,
this is a studio, and a computer and a bit of software and a decent microphone, and off you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was most of this done not in the bedroom, but in a small studio set up, and
it was on very primitive equipment that kept freezing on us. We'd get halfway through doing a harmony and the whole thing would freeze, and then reset. Very cumbersome, out of date equipment, and I'm going to treat myself to some new gear, because I wouldn't want to go through that process again of being so much a slave to the software. And even the final mixing and mastering, it took far longer than it had to. But maybe the fact that we had to work harder to make it happen has made it the product it is. People are saying such nice things about it, and
but how much of it is, or is there any computer generated music there, or is it all a voice or an instrument somewhere down the line, however altered since the original?
Every track has a live element in it of some sort. I think her vocal also helps propel anything. But there's quite a lot of synth programming in there as well.
But is that actually played on what do you call it? What's the term that they use when you link a keyboard to a computer?
Yeah, a dumb keyboard, a MIDI interface.
MIDI interface.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
that you're using that a lot, and
there's a fair bit of that, but we try to have at least one live instrument in every track as well. We have a couple of different guest musicians playing on it too. We have a great guitarist on Superstars, actually, that track, a guy called Simon Hart, very talented guy who gives us a beautiful solo in the middle of it. So that was a challenge with this album, to make it feel quite live, and to make it toe tapping in places as well. There's a kind of a vaudeville track on the B side called Banana Shallot, which people instantly like because it's toe tapping. It's got quite a dark lyric in it, but you can tap your toes while you're listening to it. So.
Well, I tell you what, we've talked about it a lot. We've named a couple of tracks. Why don't we? It's presenter's choice at the moment, okay? So what I say goes.
Fair enough.
So what we'll do is we'll have a listen to Superstars, which is the second track on side one, and maybe that'll give the listener a little insight into what the whole album's about. So let's have a listen to Superstars.
Hello, we're superstars, and we get what we want, and we want what we get. Hello, we're superstars, and we eat from the table, and we drink from the plate. Hello, we're superstars, entertainment for you, so you know what superstars, entertainment for you, so you know what to do. Hello, we're the superstars, and we get what we want, and we want what we get. Hello, we're the superstars, and we eat from the table, and we drink from the cup. Hello, we're the superstars, entertainment for you, so you know what to do. Hello, we're the superstars, and we get what we want, and we want what we get. Hello, we're the superstars, and we eat from
That was Superstars. It's track 2 on Stuart Leathem and Esther Trousdale's new CD, Experiments on Energy. Traditionally in the studio, going back to the like of the Beatles, where they made their first album in 14 hours or something. And basically it was their live set at that time, recorded. I'm guessing that with the time taken here, an awful lot of recording would have been done with one person in attendance, perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe just you working at it.
Yes. Very
And
much
then, so there isn't, you clearly find that easy because that's what you've been doing. But there's no sense of a band sitting around encouraging one another to play better, do better,
There's no camaraderie whatsoever, and often I'll have the skeleton of a track figured out, but when Esther comes in and puts a vocal on it, invariably the track then changes. We talked about Within the Haze earlier. That track completely changed when she put her voice to it and became a little bit more soft, a bit more anthemic. And there would be a lot of moments, key moments in the recording of tracks where she and I will get very excited about something. And so we do get that sense of encouragement and drive. Nearly every track will have had one little moment where we've thought, right, because there was quite a sifting process to get down to 12. I think we did about 15 or 16 tracks for this album. And some of them...
So there's some more in the vault for another time, perhaps?
For the box set.
All right. The retrospective.
Aye, yeah. Whenever we get our faces on a stamp.
Stuart Leathem, the crazy years,
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, who he. But no, we definitely eventually started to, I would say mid sort of March 2019, it began to crystallize into a concept, and some tracks just didn't fit the concept. There's a track called If You Had No Cause, which was quite political, and I sing on that one, and it would never have worked on the album in any shape or form. It isn't a bad song, but it just didn't fit Experiments. So yeah, there is camaraderie, but it's in fits and starts.
And it's really only, it seems, between yourself and your lead vocalist.
Totally.
Why don't we listen to? I'm going to again, presenter's choice. I'm going to tee up the two of them under that bridge, and then we'll just go straight into Within the Haze. Sounds okay?
Great.
We'll do that now. Under the bridge and Within the Haze.
There's a that bridge, lighting a fire.
There we go, Under That Bridge, Within the Haze from Experiments in Energy. Chatting there as we were while I was playing, Stuart, I think it's true to say probably all musicians, but Van Morrison would not be known particularly for his amenable ways when it comes to interviews and small talk, if you will, and for very good reason. Although in recent years he's become much more conversational. But he did say to a recent interviewee or an interviewer that I saw, look, I don't really like talking about it. I mean, I don't want to talk about music. I want to make music. And in a way, I put you on the spot here because to ask someone to sort of talk about themselves for half an hour, without it all sounding I am wonderful and I am this and I am the other thing, it is tricky. And I know you said there while we were listening to the music you would rather talk about other people's.
Absolutely.
Which you find a lot easier. I suppose as someone, I like to listen to music on with 2 ears as well, the whatever's coming out, and then there's the, wonder how they did that, and I really love, Beach Boys, for example, I've been listening to more recently again, thanks in part to lots of TV documentaries on classic albums that you see, BBC 4 on a Friday night. You're pretty much guaranteed that kind of stuff over and over again. But they did Pet Sounds recently, and Brian Wilson was conceiving all that. He was only 21 years of age. And it's phenomenal the lengths that are gone to double track and triple track, and with relatively, well, not basic, but not as, there was no 24 tracks available to it. I think 8 was the maximum he could use. But all that sort of stuff, and I know it's a little bit nerdy, but it appeals to me. So that's why I was trying to push you on the construct of certain songs, because it's interesting to me that did you say Try to Let It Go?
Yeah, the final
Started off,
Yeah.
as something totally different in your mind too. But when Esther came in and added the vocal, right, we're going to have to change this thing here.
Yes, it almost turned into a Bond theme and a real kind of goer to finish the album on, and a toe tapper. We also reference David Bowie's Black Star album because there's a little percussion link between Within the Haze and Try to Let It Go that kind of ties those two tracks together. And I think the last two tracks on his Black Star album, his final album, did something very similar. It's a completely different style, but same sort of idea. But Try to Let It Go, that's one that I can listen to. I still feel so close to this record. I can't really listen to it.
I know.
And whenever we launched it at the Black Box a few weeks ago and it was being played for the first time, I was practically in the fetal position at the back of the room because
I saw that.
I find it quite hard.
Standing at the back, shifting from foot to foot,
Yeah. I find it hard to accept that people like it, and even when people tell me they like it, I sort of think, well, they're just saying that because they have to say something. I think it's because for years and years, before I met Esther Trousdale, people didn't really want to listen to what I was doing, and I completely accept that she is the vehicle that has made my composing and all these strange concepts accessible to the world. And I mean, we've been downloaded so many times in so many countries now. I still find it hard to accept that people will, out of choice, go to one of these tracks and like it. But Try to Let It Go, I love the track. I can very easily sit and listen to that one, and it references the first track on the album as well, Grand Cafe. The lyrics from Grand Cafe reappear in Try to Let It Go, and Grand Cafe essentially, and Superstars, are lyrically about us deciding to come back and do it again. That's really what's going on there. Hope that makes sense.
I think certainly for me the vocals make it. But that's not only because the vocals are so strong and so beautiful anyway, but it can be, unless you're particularly fond of classical music or perhaps very progressive modern jazz, most people like a vocal, enjoy a vocal. Even if the vocal's only a small part of the whole piece, there's something that it brings it all together.
Humanizes it, doesn't it?
Humanizes it. That's a good word, because I remember, it probably mean nothing to you, Third Ear Band. No. Were a late 60s extremely progressive, not prog rock, but progressive avant-garde band. And I can hear, you've never heard of them,
No.
but perhaps you can go and listen to them now.
Yeah.
And you might see what I'm getting at. They were totally instrumental, and it was okay up to a point. They played a concert in the Ulster Hall. I think it was 1969, and the concert was in two halves, and each half consisted of a piece that lasted, 30, 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Off they went for a break,
Jeez.
come back and played another piece, 30, 35 minutes. Very avant-garde.
Yeah.
And it almost made me feel like restless, that
Yeah.
when does the singing start?
Yeah.
Where's the hook? Where's the when can I right?
Yeah. And even on the big dream pieces, there's a track on this album called Yellow Syrup. It's her voice that it's very infrequent, but it's there, and it kind of makes you feel okay, everything's all right. We've still got company, and she's a joy to write for. Imagine having a voice like that.
I know.
To write music for, and she buys in to my concepts, and she never asks me, what's this about? She's not like the Beach Boys talking to Brian Wilson when he was doing Smile.
Sure.
Well, Brian, why are we singing about this?
Well,
What does that? What does
wrong
that
with
even mean?
What's wrong with surf songs?
Correct. Yeah.
Don't mess with the formula.
We never have any discussions about what these songs are about. Really, certain tracks mean things to her, and lyrically we slip in all sorts of little personal things. But actually, we don't really talk much about what they're about. We both just buy into the concept and go with it and see it through. And thankfully, it seems we have an album where things flow quite well. It definitely flows better than anything I've ever done before.
Okay.
So,
Stuart, that's a good place to I think end this evening. Thank you very much for coming in.
well, thank you very much for having me.
For your choices from the 1950s and the 60s, and for the torture that I put you through in talking about experiments in energy.
It's been a pleasure.
What I think we'll finish with the track that you were talking about, and I like it too, and we'll possibly just run out on this, but we'll finish off with "Try to Let It Go." For the benefit of the listeners, it's Stuart Leathem, Esther Trousdale, Experiments in Energy, available on CD, but probably also
it's
work of Satan download these days. You know,
that's really
streaming,
where it's at.
yeah.
Streaming, Amazon, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. You name
It's all
it.
there.
It's all there.
It's up there and go. Okay, try to let it go.
Let's take a moment of your lifespan time to set that glass of wine down. Get your right sister and transistor. Do not touch that down. Our story is beginning in desolation, aggravation, no solution. All of this is in your mind anyway. Exit, try to let it go.
Try to let it go now, you there. Try to let it go now. Try to let it go now, you there. Try to let it go.
Really creepy thing is the way it seems we're treading through an empty landscape, unaware in truth of the fact we're strapped to the